in the heart of downtown Chicago, where the wind whipped between glass towers and the L train rumbled overhead like a restless beast. Jake Harlan lived alone in a loft that overlooked Lake Michigan. At 34, he had everything most men chase. Money from a tech exit, a body carved from years of obsessive gym hours, and a reputation that followed him like a shadow. Women talked. They always talked. 9.5 inches, thick as a Red Bull can, and unforgiving. It wasn't a blessing. It was a curse he carried in custom-tailored jeans. They all ran eventually. There had been Ashley from L.A., a Pilates instructor, who swore she could handle anything until the moment clothes came off and her eyes went wide with genuine fear. She laughed nervously, made an excuse about an early flight, and ghosted by morning. Then Vanessa, the corporate lawyer from New York, who bragged about her sexual bucket list until she saw it and whispered, "I'm not trying to restructure my organs tonight, Jake." Door slammed. Read receipt left on. Miami, Seattle, Austin's story on every dating app from Raya to Hinge. Eid. Stopped counting at 23. Women who bolted, cried, or simply froze. Some tried. Most couldn't. The ones who managed a few minutes left limping, swearing off sex for weeks. He learned to warn them early. Most still thought they were the exception until they weren't. So Jake gave up. He deleted the apps, poured himself into work, and accepted that some men are built for loneliness. That was before he met Isabella Moreau. She was 29, born in Haiti, raised in Montreal, and now finishing her residency in trauma surgery at Northwestern Memorial. They met at a rooftop bar in the West, Loop, on a humid Friday in July. Jake was there with colleagues nursing a single malt, staring at the skyline like it owed him something. Isabella walked in wearing a simple black dress that hugged her athletic frame, her long braids swaying as she laughed with friends. She had the kind of beauty that didn't ask for attention. It simply took it. Their eyes locked across the crowd. She smiled first. He didn't smile back. He'd stopped trusting smiles months ago. But she crossed the room anyway. "You look like someone who's tired of being approached," she said in a soft French-Caribbean accent, leaning against the bar next to him. "Occupational hazard," he replied. "I'm Isabella." "Jake." She ordered a rum neat. "No ice." He noticed her hands, surgeon's hands, steady and scarred in tiny places. They talked for 2 hours. She told him about gunshot wounds and car wrecks, about 12-hour shifts where she held hearts in her palms. He told her about code and venture capital, but mostly he listened. She had a way of making the world feel smaller, safer. When the bar announced last call, she touched his wrist. "Walk me home?" He hesitated. The warning sat on his tongue like bitter medicine. "Isabella, there's something you should know." She raised an eyebrow. "You're married? Wanted in 3 states? Allergic to condoms?" He exhaled. "None of those. Just, I'm not built like most guys. It's caused problems before. A lot of them." She studied his face, then laughed softly. "Mon cher, I sew arteries the width of spaghetti. I think I can handle whatever you're overthinking." He almost believed her. They took a cab to her condo in Streeterville. The tension in the elevator was thick enough to choke on. She kissed him first, slow, deliberate, like she was mapping territory. When they reached her door, she pulled him inside without turning on the lights. Moonlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, silver across the hardwood. Clothes fell away. Shirt, dress, bra. His boxer briefs last. She looked down and didn't flinch. Jake waited for the familiar panic, the excuses, the retreat. Instead, Isabella traced one finger along the length of him. Clinical at first, then curious. Her lips curved. "Oh, okay," she said calmly. "We're doing this my way." She disappeared into the bedroom and came back with a bottle of high-end silicone lube and a towel. Then she pushed him gently onto the couch. "Rule number 1, she murmured, straddling his lap but not taking him yet. "We'd go slow. You don't move until I say it. Rule number 2, if I say stop, we stop. No ego. Understood?" He nodded, throat dry. She kissed him again, deeper this time, rocking against him until he was aching. Minutes blurred. She used her hands first, both of them slick with lube, stroking with the confidence of someone who'd spent years mastering precision under pressure. When she finally rose up and guided the head inside, she paused, breathing through it, letting her body adjust inch by torturous inch. Jake's hands gripped the couch cushions hard enough to leave marks. He'd never felt anything like the heat of her, the impossible tightness that still somehow welcomed him. She took her time rocking, retreating, rocking again until 20 minutes later, her hips finally met his and she let out a low, triumphant moan. "There," she whispered against his neck. "See? Not impossible." Then she started to move. It wasn't the frantic porn star, riding he'd half expected from women, trying to prove something. It was slow, deliberate, almost meditative. Every roll of her hips was controlled, every breath measured. She watched his face like she was reading vitals, adjusting angle and depth until pleasure replaced the strain in his expression. At some point, she flipped them, pushed him onto his back, and climbed on top again, this time faster, chasing her own rhythm. Her braids whipped across his chest. Sweat slicked their skin. When she came the first time, it was with a sharp cry that echoed off the windows, her whole body locking around him so hard he saw stars. She didn't stop. Second orgasm came with her facing away, hands braced on his thighs, riding reverse until her legs shook. The third time he took over carefully, still following her earlier rules, lifting her against the window, the city lights glittering behind her as she wrapped her legs around his waist and begged in breathless Creole. They didn't make it to the bed until dawn, later tangled in sheets that smelled like sex and coconut oil. She traced lazy circles on his chest. "So that's what all the fuss was about," she said, amused. "You're not sore?" "Oh, I'm going to feel this for days," she admitted, stretching like a cat. But in the best way, like finishing a marathon you trained years for. He laughed for the first time in months, real, unguarded laughter. Over the next weeks, they became insatiable. She worked insane hours, but whenever she had a night off, they disappeared into her condo or his loft. She taught him new meanings of the word control edging, him for an hour while she studied flashcards for her boards, making him wait until she decided he'd earned release. He learned her body the way she'd learned his. What angles made her gasp. How deep was too deep, when to pull back and when to push. One October evening, after a 16-hour shift where she'd lost a 17-year-old to a drive-by, she came home silent and shaking. He didn't ask questions, just carried her to the shower, washed her hair, held her while she cried. Then she looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes and said, "I need to feel something that isn't death tonight." He gave her exactly that, slow, reverent, until she was sobbing again, but for entirely different reasons. By Christmas, they were official. She met his friends who stared at her in open awe, trying to figure out how this petite trauma surgeon had tamed the untamable. He met her mother over Zoom, stumbling through French phrases while Isabella smirked beside him. On New Year's Eve, high above the city as fireworks exploded over Navy Pier, she pressed against him on his balcony and whispered, "You know all those women who ran? Their loss." He kissed her temple. "I was starting to think I'd never find someone who didn't." Isabella turned in his arms, eyes glittering brighter than the skyline. "Jake," she said softly, "I didn't just not run. I came home." And in the frozen Chicago night, with the wind howling and the lake stretching black and endless below them, he finally believed. Some curses were just blessings in disguise waiting for the one woman brave enough, strong enough and stubborn enough to claim them.